we should talk about this amazing book because this truly is an amazing book. It came out in 2004, is that correct?
Yes, and actually, Dr. Koegal and I are currently and deep into the throes of revising it and updating it. We're going to have an updated, revised, new edition next April in time for Autism Month next April. So Autism Awareness Month. Yeah.
Because
excited.
I have to say, I mean, this was given to me, and this and another book, total game changers for me. And as I was going back through it last night and re-looking at things with new knowledge, and I was saying, man, this really holds up quite well for having been from 2004. I would still recommend this to people. And, you know, there might have been one thing in the appendix that I thought, okay, this could use some big updating, but minorly, really, compared to the information that's in the book. So I'm thrilled that you're doing the updated version of it, but I gotta say, it really holds up well many years later.
It does, and actually one of the first things we say in the book, we wrote a foreword, and one of the first things we say is we didn't need to update it because the behavioral interventions in the book are absolutely, not only are they, you know, do they work as well today as they did 10 years ago, but research over the last decade has proven it, that this is the right thing to do. Mostly what we're doing is adding. There have been a few more studies that the Koegals have done, you know, out of their clinic that just sort of refines and gets more specific about some various information in the book. And then there are little things, as you said, like Dr. Koegal talks a lot about, you know, videotaping your kid and using those tapes, and, you know, who uses videotape anymore? So, you know, there's just little tiny things like that we're catching. And as the mom in the book, I can talk a little more just sort of long term. I was just saying to her, you know, we were working on the chapter on self-stimulation, and I can say at the end, honestly, I have not thought about self-stimulatory behaviors, you know, in so long that I can't even remember when I last did, you know, that it's not even an issue in our lives anymore.
That's amazing.
And how much I wish, you know, I'd had someone with a son in his 20s who could have said that to me back when my son was always doing hand puppets, you know, all day long. So so there's also that sort of added bit of information of what the last 10 years have brought for us.
Great. And I'm going to come back to the hand puppets because I actually dog-eared one of those pages because we had a question come in about hand puppets the other day, so I want to make sure we do talk about that. But just a little bit of background for people who aren't familiar with the book. Your subtitle here, Finding the Answers, Strategies, and Hope That Can Transform a Child's Life. And then a further subtitle, A State-of-the-Art Approach of Reducing the Symptoms of Autism Spectrum Disorders. Wonderful titles for the book. So, and you've got Lynn Koegal, Dr. Lynn Koegal, co-writing this with you. I love the approach of this because you have the science person, the clinician who's there, giving information about something, and then we got the mom's perspective on it, your perspective on it throughout the book. Really was such a soothing thing to me after my son had been diagnosed to be able to get both of those sides of it.
Yes. That was our goal right away. You know, Dr. Koegal asked me, you know, our son was seeing her. She was his therapist, and we don't live in Santa Barbara, so we didn't get to see her as often as I would have liked, but whenever we could, we'd come down and go up, actually, and, you know, sort of find a few more things to focus on and bring back the information to the people we worked with here. She found out I was a writer and had asked if I could work on a brochure for their clinic, and I did, and she liked the way that came out. And then one night she just called me and said, "Would you like to write a book together?" And I jumped around the room for a long time. You know, I'm a fiction writer and never even thought about writing nonfiction, but in this case, this wasn't something I was going to say no to.
Right.
But it was very early on. We fooled around for a while with how we wanted to do this, and we decided very early on that if we had, you know, her really just practical, great, terrific, researched methods as, you know, the bulk of the book, but then my coming in and sort of saying, you know, how they worked for us, the ways in which I felt maybe I wasn't implementing them as well as I should because life gets in the way, you know, what I saw changing in my son, and just sort of the whole, yeah, it is a little hard, you know.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you need to hear both sides. It's worth doing the work but that doesn't mean it's going to be a piece of cake. And experts are so good about telling us what to do, but they don't always sort of get what the experience is like of doing it.
Yeah.
And we did have both those perspectives. And I think it is, as you said, I think there's something sort of soothing about knowing that it's real. It's not just someone telling you, oh, this is what you should do. It's someone saying these are the ways in which we've tried to do it and what's really worked for us.
And you start at the very beginning. You go from even before you're getting the diagnosis, and you address that there's an emotional component for the parents as you're going through that process, and as you're starting to begin intensive treatment, that there's an emotional component to it. And I think a lot of books leave that out.
Right.
And I love that you didn't. Because I love it when somebody says you're not wrong for feeling what you're feeling. And I can remember reading and going, okay, I'm not wrong. I'm having emotions and I'm not wrong, thank God. Truly amazing book. And just for people to go through, I'm just going to read down through some of the chapter titles here, because Diagnosis, Surviving the Worst News You'll Ever Get. Chapter 2, Ending the Long Silence, Teaching Your Child to Communicate. Chapter 3, Tears, Meltdowns, Aggression, and Self-Injury, Breaking the Cycle. Chapter 4, Self-Stimulation, Flapping, Banging, Twirling, and Other Repetitive Behaviors. Chapter 5, Social Skills. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I love that one of the last chapters is Family Life, Fighting Your Way Back to Normalcy, with some very cool tips about how you make that work. It's a really comprehensive book, and as I said, stands the test of time. And I think you're absolutely right. There's more research to show how effective these different strategies are. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very, very proud of that book.
You should be. You absolutely should be. And I mentioned, you actually mentioned the hand puppets. Your son, Andrew, did hand puppets. And we had a question come in about hand puppets. And I dog-eared the page here because somebody was saying the other day that this is something that their child does and that it's of great interest to them. And what I love here is that you describe what your child was doing about the hand puppets, and then here is the next little segment that says how not to get rid of the hand puppets. And it details all of the things that you did that you thought were going to work that didn't work. That was truly brilliant because and then you have the doctor's advice and eventually working on it in a way that was substantive. But I thought it was great that you included the here's what not to do. Absolutely loved that. And that's not the only place in the book. But we should take a short break and then we'll come back and talk with you some more because I want to find the next page that I want to talk about. So stick with us. We've got Claire LaZebnick, co-author of Overcoming Autism. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Autism Live. And actually, let's talk autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's just Shannon today. Nancy is away on a school trip with her son, and we're so glad that she had the opportunity to do that. But I'm here in the studio, and we have with us live on via Skype, Claire LaZebnick, co-author of Overcoming Autism. And this is an amazing book. I've said this is one of the first 2 books that I got on autism, and it really was a game changer. I was about to have a coughing fit, so we went very abruptly to a break. But we've been talking about the hand puppets. And for those of you who go and get this book, and I want to encourage you to go get it, on page 127, Claire talks about her son and a stim that he would do with hand puppets, and then goes into detail about all the things that she tried that didn't work before getting the doctor's advice. And you mentioned that this is not a part of your life anymore.
Not at all. It's such a wonderful thing sometimes. We all get so caught up in the daily problems and the things we're still fretting about that I think it's really important sometimes to stop and think about the things that we don't worry about anymore, that just aren't an issue anymore. And that's just one of them. I mean, it's almost hard to remember. In fact, I mentioned we're revising Overcoming Autism right now, and I'm reading stories about my own son that I've forgotten because it feels so long ago.
Yeah.
And not that I've forgotten hand puppets. They were too big a part of our lives, and there was enough anxiety about them back then for it to stay with me for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's just he doesn't, it's just not something that he does. It's just gone. It's gone, and without our having to really pinpoint it or fret about it all that much. Ultimately, I mean, once Dr. Koegal said to us, this isn't something to really worry about. Teach him when it's appropriate, when it isn't appropriate, and try to keep him from doing it if it interferes with things like socializing and learning. But in general, we didn't actually have to target it as we got to get this out of our lives. It really was never like that. And steering it towards something positive, is the best thing of all. He liked to do something with his hands. Eventually, he started drawing. And drawing really seemed to provide a lot of the same feedback that he was getting from talking to his hands. And he's a really great artist. He's a graphic design major in college now.
Wow.
So it really, that was a good way to have channeled it, is all I can say.
Really wonderful. And I love what it says in the book about, and what the doctor says in the book about it, because as you said, we want to pick and choose what we target and when we target. And even we've had Temple Grandin on the show, and she's talked about how beneficial it was for her that her mother put limits on. She didn't try to take away her stims, put limits on it and said, yes, you can go spin that plate for an hour a day, but that's it. And instead of getting into that push me, pull you battle about something that really isn't as important as teaching skills that they can use the rest of their life, or decreasing skills that are preventing them from access to things in their life. So
exactly.
Great advice. I also want to, because a lot of people are still in IEPs, as hard as it is to believe. I've got an IEP coming up. You have a great chapter on education in here. And it's a little more dog-eared than the rest of my book, because I referred back to it many times about how to choose a teacher. And I think it's particularly timely, not only for people who are doing IEPs right now, but a lot of people are doing the open house time of year, where you're going to go to your school, and we have always now spent a few minutes in our child's classroom and then shopped other classrooms using your criteria.
Oh, good.
Because you have this great list of things about what to look for in a teacher to know whether your child is going to succeed in the classroom. You're rewriting your book now, so I don't know how familiar you are with the things that are in your book if you've got somebody who's 20 years old, but does the teacher have good behavioral control of her students? Is the teacher able to individualize the instruction for the variety of different student abilities in her classroom? Is the teacher willing and enthusiastic about having your child in their class? I love that one. And then 2 more pages of them. And talking about inclusion. We've had a lot of people asking questions about inclusion. Your chapter here on education and classroom, I'm going to use the word brilliant. And I mean it.
Great. I'm happy to hear that.
And not only that, in the back, it's a little bit different than what I use, but you've got a great behavior data sheet.
Right.
And a great toilet training data sheet, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Really, really love this. So as you're looking at the changes that you're making, you said you're not having to do much to the guts of the book.
Right. It's almost entirely adding. We're adding. For instance, I happened to just right before we started this interview, I was working on the school chapter, and Dr. Koegal and I are adding a couple of more criteria for the teacher selection.
Awesome.
She had added one really great one is, is the teacher willing to be a team player? Is she or he willing to be part of your team? And I was very lucky. I had a one-on-one aide who was willing to come to our house and meet with Dr. Koegal and the other people we were working with at the time, and we would coordinate things all across, the different environments. So if there was something we needed to really work on, everybody would be working on it wherever, my son was. And it's just so important to find someone who's receptive, who if you say, what, when he does that behavior, don't take him out of the classroom, even if that's what you would normally do, because he finds that reinforcing. Instead, please ignore that and try to get his attention doing this. You want someone who'll say, okay, I'll try that. I'm happy to try whatever you want me to try. And not someone who says, I've been doing this for years. Don't tell me how to do my job.
Yes, absolutely. The people I love it when sarcastically, when you run into an educator who thinks they've learned everything.
Yeah.
Because then you know that it's not somebody who really is all that interested in learning. I want to take a minute now to talk about, because you refer to Andrew so many different times in the book, and there's a very moving section in the back where the doctor talks about her experience of Andrew at the point in which you finished the book, and talking about meeting another professional, and the professional asking, had she cured any children, and the discussion that ensued about the term cure, not necessarily a correct term, but are there children who get to the point where they're virtually indistinguishable from their peers? Absolutely. And that she was also at a reception where someone who knew your family did not know that you had a son on the spectrum. And in fact, when the person was told, yes, that you have a son on the spectrum, they guessed wrong which one. Is that correct? Did that really happen?
Yes, that was a true story, and very gratifying at that stage of our lives. Yeah. Yeah.
And so my big question for you is, tell us a little bit more, because we love, as an autism mom, I love to hear stories about what his life is like now, and what your life is like now, how much autism plays a role in your life.
Well, that's it. I've got to be careful about, because he's an adult now.
Yes.
And has his own life. I try to be a little more circumspect than I was back when he was.
I appreciate
6.
that.
But I can tell you that it's very funny, because as I've been rewriting the book, and it's happened that currently this came up with you, that we would do this interview, and I saw my brother-in-law's play, which is about autism, and I had worked with him a little on that. Just read it for him, and I just recently, a couple different people, I get emails and phone calls from people referred by friends or off of the book with more questions as follow-up to the book, and I always try to answer. I consider that the community service I do in life is responding to people who want to know more. And so for some reason, after years of really not having autism be much of my life at all, it's all come back in the last few months, and I'm sort of steeped in it again, and it made me realize that as far as our daily life goes, it really hadn't been. I'd say, Andrew has been in college now. He just finished his junior year, and he goes to college 2,500 miles away from home. He goes to college in Vermont. And he's not great about calling, which is disappointing, but also means that I can go, there are days where it's just, it's amazing to think that there was this time in my life when every day was about, which therapies I would take him to, and what my interactions would be like with him, and was I keeping him engaged enough, and was I being a good mom for him, and helping him grow and learn. And now, it's just not part of my life in the same way. It's more, as I said, it's more about the book now and about consulting with other people, which isn't to say there are no problems in our personal lives because of it, that we're free of some of the challenges that it brings with it. We're not, and things do come up. And we try to find the most productive ways of supporting and helping. As I said, we tend to be far away a lot of the year, which makes it more challenging. During the summer, other things happen, and we're just so lucky that we have Dr. Koegal in our lives, because she's there for us to call on and help us. And she and her clinic have been doing amazing work with young adults on the spectrum and older adults. Everywhere from college students to middle-aged people. They've been working a lot with that older range. It's very different issues that come up at that point. And they've really worked out some wonderful interventions for supporting, most of it's social in those ages, and they're doing amazing things.
And we should say the name of her clinic. It's in Santa Barbara.
Yes, it's the Koegal Autism Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara. It was renamed fairly recently, so it is named after Lynn Kern Koegal and her husband, Robert work together and run the clinic together.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so thrilled for you, and I'm so thrilled for your family. I definitely hear you that it's not a perfect existence. I think we've all let go of the idea that there is anything called normal,
That's right.
and there is anything called perfect. Monica Holloway's new book is called "There Goes Perfect," which I think is fabulous, and love to have realized that we have mutual friends in her. And I hope when the new book comes out that both you and Dr. Koegal will come and be on the show to talk with us and to promote the new version of the book. But in the meantime, I got to tell people, great book. You need to have it. And if you've got a friend who has recently had a child been diagnosed, this stands the test of time. Great book to put in somebody's hands as a gift to say, welcome to the club you never thought you were going to belong to, but now that you're here you go. Here's a great thing to have.